Good morning, fellas. And as Bill has said that Steve's had some issues with his laptop or whatever, and if he joins us, that's fine. We'll just continue on. I'll say something, and then use we'll sing his whatever the hymn is. I forget the name of it, but we'll do that next week. So, well, we are in the midst of as Bill has reminded us, we're in the midst of a study in John. We're in the home stretch, but we're not, I'm not desirous to get it over or get it done. I'm really enjoying what I'm learning and what we're collectively discussing week after week. And this has been very enjoyable to me personally, and a big thank you to you guys who want to participate in the discussions. So let's begin. Today we're going to look at the idea of choice. And last week, it's going to be based on 18:5. Last week, as a reminder, we ended up with this graphic um, depicting two different ways. We have what I'm calling the Judas way, and then we have the way of Jesus on the right. And they both ways begin by receiving a gift. That's really important. That Judas's gift is he knew that place. It had been given to him. He knew that as a place of where the disciples would gather and discuss and pray. Jesus, and it says this within the text, he knew their knowledge. Judas knew the place. Jesus knew all things. And I'm looking at both of those as a gift. And what's common of the two ways is they begin in the same place. They have a gift. But what's different is that the two diverge from that point. The first um, the first way is taking the gift and making it into something that they think is right. They think is good. They're doing the group is doing what they think in order to bring the peace. The second, demonstrated by Jesus, is the actual peace bringer. He is actually bringing peace, and he is inviting the first folks to examine their box, the lines they've drawn, what they have created. And so that's what we looked at last week. And then we discussed our thoughts on that. Got a lot of really good input and interaction from that graphic last week. So we'd like to pick up where we left off, this idea of gift and how gift leads to choice. And I do say that what we're going to look at this morning is going to be pretty foundational. We're going to use the same graphic several times and in several ways. I've used this in the past. I don't think I've ever shared this idea with you about the idea of choice. And of course, I'll make the correlation between gift and choice. So what we're going to look at has a lot of different aspects to it, and I find it super interesting and a way that you and I can think about the choices we make. The text reads in verse 5, they answered him. Now, they answered him when Jesus said, "Who are you seeking?" And that's from verse 4. And they say, "Jesus the Nazarene." And he said to them, "I am he." And Judas also, who was betraying him, was standing with him. There is a huge amount of meaning in the term "I am he." And rather than talking about that in one time, I want to share one idea this week, and then we're going to move into the "I am he." And actually, verse 6, we'll look at it, the response next week. Verse 5 shows a solidarity. The entire group, and we've looked at possible sizes of this group, they're seeking the same thing, thus solidarity. Somehow they're seeking the peace, they're seeking what is right, but they're out for how they perceive the good. Judas, one of the 12, knew the place, as we've already mentioned. He knew because he'd been given this as a gift, as already mentioned. And what he does with this gift through exercising choice, there's the correlation between gift and choice, it leads to evil. And I shared this graphic last week. He had been given the place, which is a gift. He builds his own reality. He acquires support for his gift, for his reality. He self-equips with lanterns, torches, weapons to fulfill his reality. And this is all done in the name of kingdom, the kingdom itself. My perception, and I think it, from what the feedback I've gotten from you guys is the chosen is also holding this same idea, is that Judas is not a bad guy, but he's really a misdirected guy exclusively by what he's created in his head. He's attempting to force the issue so the kingdom will come. He's doing what he's doing in the name of the kingdom advancement. And I know John White has brought up the fact that he was a thief and so forth based on the text. I understand that. And, that certainly can be debated and certainly valid. But my general perception is that he's a misdirected individual because of what he's created in his own head based on what he thinks needs to happen. And thus it leads to evil. And he starts with a gift, he builds his own reality, and it ends up in destruction. And I think his way is a common human way. I've seen it, I've experienced both sides of it, and it's very painful and destructive. Here is a way to think about the choices we make. Now, we're gonna pause on the text and we're gonna look at this model here of choices, because we're going to use this several times and in different ways as we proceed from here. And Steve, we want to say good morning to you. Thank you for your communication. I know you have prepared a song, but we're not going to stop, and we'll use our comment was, we know it's on the resurrection, and the resurrection is here to stay, so we can do that next week. So,
yeah, good to join you. Sorry about being late.
No worries whatsoever. Thanks for joining. So here's a way to think about our choices. We all have a current state. This is going to tie into quantum physics, which, bear with me. Just bear with me for a little bit here. And this current state, this moment right now, is represented by an A position, a dot, a place in time that we on this call are sharing at this moment. It's an A position. And so we go through life in a series of current states, but that's not the all of it. Our current state, regardless of our perception, whether we know it or not, our current state is that we are created by God, and God loves everything God creates. And so therefore, and I've got that, this is one verse of a whole narrative of the New Testament, or actually within the Bible. For God so loved the world God's love is expansive, and it's my belief that God loves everything that God creates. So if I can fog a mirror and you can fog a mirror, which we do, we can embrace the fact that we are loved by God. And I think that is a critical component within this journey we call life. I think this idea is what was paramount, number one, in the person of Jesus. He knew, first of all, his relationship with the Father. He acted entirely, exclusively out of that relationship through the language that we've looked at in John and other Gospels over and over. He was never out of relationship, and he was never out of the place of being loved. And that informed his decisions from that time forward. And the same is true of you and I. If I can act out of the frame of mind that I am loved, it can dramatically affect my choices. And we'll explain, we'll continue on with the graphic. Now, this A position, this current state, is always true at any given moment. And what is also true is that there are numerous future possibilities, and those are represented by the little circles P1 through 7. And at any given moment, now this is a quantum physics idea, but I'm going to bring it into the big world, and everyone here should be able to acknowledge this is true. At any given moment, some moments are more important than others, but at any given moment, let's say a critical juncture, I have a series of choices that are all possibilities. In the quantum physics language, this is called superposition. They're all real. Remember when I showed the double slit experiment? And this is what this is talking about. Those particles actually behave like a wave, like I have depicted here, and they're actually moving through two slots at the same time, according to the double slit experiment. But now move that to the big world, the Newtonian world, our world. And I think we've got to believe that at any given moment, my reaction really determines the next step. There's several possibilities. And my current state, my awareness of my current state has everything to do with which possibility I choose. Now, they're not equal. The possibilities are 1 through, in this case, for illustration, 1 through 7. And they can be prioritized in poor to great. And the poor possibilities are the ones that only include me and my betterment, my situation, and pretty all ego-centered. The best possibility is looking from the broader perspective of what includes, for example, my spouse and the person I am talking to, and that would be the other. And at any given moment, I submit to you that we have these possibilities of choosing what is the best of the possibilities. They're all possibility could also be called, if you look up quantum, if you delve into this, you could look up potentials. They're all potentials. They all are they're part of it. They're not separate. They're part of the same relationship. And the wave in this diagram is representing the all of the possible relationships between the current state and the future possibilities. Not everything is a possibility, but there are several possibilities or potentials. In quantum physics language, this is what's called the Schrodinger equation. And I'll get to your little cartoon in a minute, Vince. That made me chuckle. But Schrodinger was a quantum physicist that came up with this, and this is like quantum physics 101. That doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but at the Newtonian level, at our level, all we need to do is embrace the idea that at any given moment, I have choices. And the awareness of what is true of my current state is going to dramatically affect my choices. Within my daily experience, like I just said, there are numerous possibilities at any given current state moment. My awareness of my current state informs what comes next. I've said this now for probably the fourth time because it's absolutely critical. And here we have Vince. Vince sent this out this last week, I believe, to all of us. And I don't know, well, it has to do with the resurrection. And I find it really funny, but if there's no background in who Schrodinger was, it's confusing. But according to Schrodinger, he's got a famous thought experiment called the cat. And if you look that up, it will have bearing on this. Is the cat, according to the Schrodinger equation of superposition, Jesus is both alive and dead, but as soon as the door is opened, he raises the dead. Now this is a cartoonish example, but the forgotten disciple. Vince, I thought it was funny. So here we are. Here we are. We're moving in and out of this quantum world, but here, what I call the Newtonian world, our world, the big world, we've got a pair of glasses. At any given juncture, you and I have been given the gift to choose, and there it is. This is exactly what Judas was given, a gift. This is what Jesus is given. Every moment of his existence is a gift. Life is a lot of life and health is coming to the realization of that it comes to me, and life is a gift. And we take that gift and we can choose. And we can choose however we wish because my belief is that we have free will. Think of it as being an observer, thus the glasses, preparing to select your possibility. And again, if I'm in a conflict with Sandra, it really behooves me to be aware of what is going on, to be engaged in the moment, to press into what is going on, and to be fully present so I can make the best possibility for the common good, for the good for both of us, not just a defensive posture of self-protection. That would be up here. Or don't bug me right now, I'm busy. That's even worse. That would be a -1. But I have responded much of my life from here, and I've responded okay in this realm, and in a few occasions in life I can respond from a very good position because that has direct bearing on my awareness of my current state. I'd like to suggest that we go through life very much unaware of this reality, and as a result, we just ad hoc, by the seat of the pants, make comments and choices, and they have dramatically destructive outcomes because we're not thinking of the fact that my current state is I'm loved. And that is the place to begin. Now we go around, we circle, and we're in interaction, and we make our choice. In this case, we choose possibility number 6. And possibility number 6 in the rating scale has a lot to do with the other. So I'd call that a good choice. When we choose our possibility, and we do it all the time, either known or unknown, conscious or unconscious, all other possibilities collapse. Now that's the Schrodinger equation. There is no going back. There is no rewinding the back. When I choose, the other possibilities vanish. That's the Schrodinger equation, the power of the observer. The best possibility is fueled by love. Thus, I equate love with wisdom. In quantum physics language, this is called the collapse of the wave function, and you can look that up. And it is a reality that exists at the quantum level, and it's a piece of our reality as well. Mr. Bell, yes.
And those possibilities, you say until we choose, they're all there, but choosing not to choose is a choice. Am I correct?
Choosing not to choose would be a P something. It's still a choice.
So there's a choice no matter what happens. I mean,
There's
if you
always, yeah. You
Okay,
cannot not choose. And
gotcha.
I
Thank
look
you.
at this, I look at that reality, Bill, as the gift of life. If I
Right.
can engage this reality, I mean, Paul and the writers of the Bible had they didn't know about quantum physics, but the way
But
they talk about it, I think is
but if you sit
really
there and say,
interesting.
gee, I don't know, I want 6 or I want 5, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Well, and by waiting, because time goes on, by waiting, you're making a choice, which
Yeah,
is the null
yeah,
alternative.
yeah.
Okay.
The choice comes to me and I make the choice, and a non-choice is a choice.
Okay.
So we choose our possibilities, either known or unknown. All other possibilities collapse. And as soon as that happens, it's collapsed. The best possibility is the one fueled by love, thus wisdom. Now, to tie this into the Bible, and please hear me out, I'm not saying Paul understood any of this, but he's talking in the same language. Paul states the greatest to be love. Now, Paul doesn't know quantum physics, but he knows that in the realm of possibility, he's saying the greatest is the one that is love. He's categorizing action in 1 Corinthians 13, and he's saying the greatest is love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. He also says love never fails in 13:8. He actually says that prior, but he's talking about the importance of choosing that which is out of a basis of love. And the only way I can do that is I've got to embrace in the moment what is true of me. And that is that I am a loved child of God. So I choose. And now P6 becomes the new A. It's the new current moment or current state. What is true of my prior current state shifts forward because his love is everlasting. His love for us never changes. What was true 1 second ago is true in the now because love is based in God, not in my performance or in my choices. It never changes. I am loved regardless and relentless and unconditional by God Almighty. The past is now the past. It's part of our history. What was true is informing my current state, but I can't go back. This is where the power of forgiveness comes in, because all I can do with the past is enter in to grieve it, to acknowledge it, to grieve it, and to forgive it. And that brings me to a healthy new state of what is actually true, an awareness. Before I do that, I live in a fog. I'm living in current state in a fog. This is where Judas was. He built for himself his own fog. He created his own reality, and he started to build on his own reality, and it just went south because he never dealt with what was actually true. He couldn't be in that current state of clarity, a true understanding of the A, because of his own perceptions, is what he's created. Thus, the human problem. Each current state is unique. And this another important point, Bill, is that my current state is different than your current state because we are two uniquely different individuals. And that's true of every one of us here. And again, to think about this in light of gift, I have been given this gift at this moment to embrace and to respond in a way. And what should that way be of all these possibilities? We see demonstrated week after week. We're in week 231, the incarnation of Christ Jesus of Nazareth, and we see him in a series of relationships like this, his current state and how he responds out of that current state. And he responds every time with a P7. It's about what is best. We see Jesus always responding from the best possibility, as Paul states, the greatest out of love. This is how I think about Philippians chapter 2, verses 4 through 11. In there, Paul addresses the church at Philippi, and he says, have this mind in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So he's actually providing a directive for them to adopt the thinking of Jesus Christ, the mind of Christ. And if you read through the text, it's exactly what we're talking about, choices. And the choices that are made at any given moment, and the choices that we make, he humbled himself, being obedient unto death, even death on the cross. It is a pattern of living that he's talking about. And we're illustrating that through our diagram before us. Additionally, I mean, this is throughout, especially through the New Testament writers post-Christ, because Christ demonstrated this. If you look at 1 John 3:16, and it would be a really good exercise to meditate on John 3:16 and 1 John 3:16. And this verse teaches that Jesus' sacrificial love defines what true love really is. This is how we know what love is. He says it right there, John. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. And we, in a similar sense, you and I on this Zoom meeting, our Bible study, we also are invited to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. In my funky little diagram, it's choosing P7. P6 or P7, we're not perfect. But we want to choose better, not out of self-preservation or self-defense or to be right, the numerous of default ways of thinking, but to choose what is best. What this means for you and I, at any current state, which there are numerous, regardless of details, I can embrace, I am loved unconditionally by my Creator. Now, to the degree that you and I can embrace that for ourselves is a challenge. But I'm proposing that this is what is true. Number two, as I embrace this to be true, at the moment, I will make better choices because the better choice is the one fueled by love, demonstrated 100% by the person of Jesus. And so what happens, the A opens up a whole nother avenue of future possibilities. There's a new relationship. The past is part of our present. I can't go back and rewind it. The only thing I can do is ultimately forgive it. And I can move forward from here. And hopefully I move forward in clarity, not fogginess of that which I create. So here's a way to think about it. A little process here. So if I can begin from any current moment, if I can, in the moment, the heated moment, I may add, that I am loved, just start there. I am loved by my Creator, regardless of my behavior. Then, within that framework of thinking, I then choose the collapse of the waveform. I choose at that point. Choice always leads to action. I could tie those two together. I could say I'm loved and I act, but I put in the term choose to slow it down. It just adds another step to slow down the sequence. I act because I choose. Sometimes I act from a seat of the pants type of mentality. I'm not even given any forethought. I'm choosing, my action depicts my choice, but to be conscious of that choice, which is being conscious of my current state, that I am loved, we make better choices, actions. We act better. And out of action comes feeling. You know, if we want to feel better, fellas, then we ought to choose action based on love. It's absolutely true. I can choose to love, and if I act out of that choice, I actually feel better. At any given moment, I have to embrace, I've been given the gift, rather. This is a perception. I, in this moment, have a gift, and so do you, this moment. And that within this moment, our collective and our individually and collectively, our current state is the fact that we are loved by God relentlessly. And if I can embrace that to be true within this moment, I look at future possibilities. I look at you. I look at me, my failures. I look at my spouse, who is a wonderful woman, but she's not perfect either. And I look at the checkout person, Martha at Lucky's. We keep bringing Martha up. I look at Martha differently. And if I see differently, I act differently. So we've talked about this one idea that we're going to be coming back to many times. We've talked about our current state and the importance of being aware of this current state. We've talked about the future possibilities at any given moment, the power of choice, what's in my court. And once I choose, I can't go back. I can only go forward from there. And let's talk. Whoa, wait a minute. Didn't mean to do that. I think I have one question. Let's talk about this. I left this graphic full so we could talk about it, the sequence. Um, what are your questions, comments, whatever you have to say? To me, this is super exciting. And it's a way to frame, it's a, and it's not the way, but it is a way to frame the power of our choices and the opportunities we have at any given moment. So um, the floor is open. Let's we got 30 minutes. So what are your thoughts?
Mike, I had a couple of thoughts. Um, One of them, I look at your scale here that says me and other as not earlier in there you had put better on there, which is
Yeah,
true about
yeah,
the scale. But to me, this is a selfishness scale.
yeah,
So at the
yeah,
top, my choice me is very selfish. At the bottom, my choice other is selfless. And it's hard for me to think of each individual position A's throughout life as then making a conscious choice. To me, a lot of what we go through is not a conscious choice, but a response or a reaction to
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
situation we find ourselves in. So if I can live in that current state, I am loved. If I dwell in that, if I bathe in that, if I'm constantly there, then my natural reactions, responses go further down onto the P6, P7 of that scale.
yeah.
So my choices, even though they're probably not even conscious choices, become less selfish if I can live in that current state, so that I'm not reacting or responding in a negative way because I have allowed myself to drift out of that current state of being loved.
As you often do, Jeff, you stated in a precise, concise way, way better than I've stated it, but that's exactly what I'm attempting to communicate through this series of slides. You got it. Thank you. Now,
Mike.
again, this is out of my head to you, and it's up to you and the individuals in our group to evaluate this. What do you think about this? How can we work about this? So, Jeff, thank you. Bill.
Well, the concern I have here is that when you get involved in in community, whether the community is one other person, like your wife or a family or whatever, and you have responsibility for other people, suddenly choices aren't clear. Um, Suddenly you have to choose that. If you choose choice A, that benefits one group of people. If you choose choice B, that benefits a different group of people. You someone's going to get let down. Someone's going to get hurt. How do you choose love in a situation where whatever choice you make is going to have winners and losers?
Bill, great question. And I couldn't agree more that it's never P1 through 7. It's not that clear. We've
Yeah.
got our emotion involved. We've got different views and perceptions. When you were at the city and your responsible position in the utility, you know, I'm sure you dealt with this all the time. Bill, you're raising a question. I'd like to hear what the other guys say, and I'd like to hear how you've dealt with it. But that's exactly what we're talking about. Maybe we
Bob, you were an insurance salesman. Did you ever have to make a choice that each choice hurts somebody different?
all the time. I like Jeff expressed, once you laid this all out, this whole graphic is reality. Um, I I'm afraid I spend so much time in the P1s through P3, possibly 1, to P3. I'm in a reactive mode.
Yeah.
And I do feel better if I've made a choice and I realize I made a choice in the higher numbers, the P5s through the P7s.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I need to continue to realize is that even though I find myself in a particular day or a particular moment in the lower numbers, P1s through P3s, that the relentless love of God for me never changes.
Yeah.
That's the gift. That's the gift to us.
Yeah.
Mike,
It,
I just
well
had,
said. Thank you for your honesty, Bob. Somebody said something.
yeah, Mike, I just had another thought. My current state is I am loved. And one of the things I think we talked about in, weeks back, was, a whole me and a unfilled somebody else, a hollow or a empty somebody else. And one of the things that struck me during that conversation was not only am I loved, but I have to continue to remind myself that no matter what they're doing or what their lifestyle is or whatever, that person is also loved.
Yeah.
And so my response or my reaction to somebody else can be colored not only by my realization that I am loved, but it is definitely colored if I can remind myself that that person is loved as well, so that my choice along the scale there becomes less selfish toward another person. If I don't realize that that person that I'm talking to is as loved as much as I am, then my response can very much be selfish and negative because I put myself above that person.
Right. Boy, Jeff, that is so true. And that's the natural step from embracing the fact that I am loved. If I can embrace I am loved, I can also embrace in a real sense the fact that the other person, regardless of their belief system or um, behavior, behavior, they too are loved by God, just like God loves me. And it's based on the reasoning God loves what God creates. And that is extremely freeing. Anybody have any examples of that?
You asked what, maybe it's not time for me to mention this, what some of the
Go ahead,
decisions we
Bill.
had to, well, it was like we had this big pie, and about a third of the slice of the pie was the wholesale bill from Flat River Power, and we'd pass it through to the customers. And that was not controversial. That was we paid for it, we sold it, we had to collect it. They got that.
Yeah.
2/3 of our pie was our infrastructure. And then
Yeah.
we had to figure out how much of that should we build to the commercial customers, how much to the industrial customers, how much to the residential customers.
Right.
And the standing joke was you made the right decision when everyone was equally mad at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you knew you did the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You were in a hard position, and yeah.
But I mean, that's true in a lot of things. With kids, your kids are going to do something. You got to make a decision,
Yeah.
and you realize one kid wants A and the other kid wants B, and whatever you do, one of them is going to be mad at you. So you're making that choice out of love. Well, convince them of that.
Yeah. Yeah, my son and I actually had this discussion yesterday in his office. He's the service manager, and how do you we had a great discussion with just dealing with unwanted situations that there's a bill and someone's got to pay it. How do you deal with that? Yeah. And I really like how my son is thinking and working through all this. So it's really good. But Jeff has brought up a question. Bill's got a question. How do we move our actions from one state to a more desirable state And that more desirable state would be an engagement in the other. I'd love to hear some stories.
Mike, I don't.
Go
Sorry,
ahead, Steve.
I don't have a story, but you've essentially cast here in a way a model of counseling,
Really?
or a model for counseling persons who are struggling, suffering. It's very insightful in that sense, and to some degree, I think moving toward better sort of emotional, psychological health means change in a sense of moving away from sort of, if you will, a self-focus to being more aware of others and how our actions affect others, and in a sense how that in turn affects us.
Yeah.
So I don't have an example here of some of the questions or an answer to some of the questions. I think for me, going back to the first chapters of Genesis and what I see in terms of not only and the rest of the Bible, not only in terms of us being into or sort of infinitely loved, I see us as being damaged in a sense. I'll just call it sin.
Yeah.
And so the question for me is how far can I move? How in the direction of better in this life, if you will? What are the possibilities? It really, and that was one of the questions that I was left with after studying, counseling and psychology is sort of how much change is possible for us.
Good question.
And it sounds really pessimistic, but to me, that your model really raises that question for me. How far can I move toward P7?
Yeah. Again, you and I, we think about this, and do you, Steve, from your professional training in counseling, do you buy the idea that if I choose to engage the other, if I'm choosing out of love, my actions are flowing from a place of what I'm proposing here. I am loved and you are loved, and I treat you in that manner. Do you buy the idea that actually comes back to ourselves in the way of a good feeling, a wholeness, a good feeling? Is that believable to you?
It is. It is very believable. And maybe here, sort of what are examples or what have we experienced? Part of our perception of being loved comes as a result of our formative years and how well we were loved by the humans who were an essential part of our lives.
Yeah.
And I sort of see a spectrum there. And if you will, I struggle here, but for kids that were abused in their formative years, it's very difficult, I think, for them to see themselves as loved. They received more abuse than love, and there becomes a protective mechanism that comes into play that in a sense prevents them from risking loving others.
Yeah.
And if you can move out of that, and so I embrace your model here. If we can move beyond that to risk again, it opens up those possibilities. They're closed off as a result of damage. And my question is, how far does redemption, salvation in the here and now aspect, remove those barriers that we may have to allow us to embrace, the love of God, and then in turn risk loving others. So that's my question. And I don't have a real good answer for it. I see variations of it. Sometimes I see miracles in terms of how people change. Sometimes I wonder, well, there isn't much change.
Right. Or a reversion back.
Yeah, I'm taking a lot of the table time here, but your model raises a lot of questions. Maybe I do have one example when you talked about seeing others as being loved. Before I had my last zigzag on the career path, I taught for about 2 weeks at Ridgeview Charter School, and it scared me. Kids sort of scare me, and the second week was teaching fifth graders. And I went into it, I was a substitute teacher for a teacher. Fortunately, she had really mapped things out, but I was pretty sort of afraid of fifth graders. It had been a long time since I was a fifth grader, and it was empowering to me to look at those kids and realize that every one of those kids was greatly loved by one parent, or hopefully two parents. And in turn, I could, in a sense, love them in a way. It was empowering to me. I guess it's just, to me, it's an example of
that's a good example.
Your model.
Yep, that's a great example. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, thanks for taking that time to share that. Yes, yeah, it sensed something in you, and something wonderful.
Yeah.
Can we go to the Garden of Gethsemane here a minute?
Yeah.
When we have two situations, Judas, I don't know if Judas was acting out of love or not by forcing his hand. We all have theories about that. But Judas brought this to people, and then when he was being crucified, he grieved and committed suicide. Peter loved Jesus, and he figured to show his love, he pulled out a sword to defend him, swung the sword, and Jesus said, "You can't do that."
Right.
And once he couldn't do that, he left. And then his next act of love was probably grieving. I mean, he just broke down and wept. Judas ended up dead. Peter ended up in the long run redeemed. I mean, I'm following this circuitous path Peter took to come out ahead here. He started the wrong path. Jesus corrected him. He didn't like it and he ran away, and then he wept. But how was he acting out of a sense of feeling loved, or what was he acting out of?
So what you've done is, like the Bill Schweitzer we know, you read ahead, buddy. You read ahead.
Well, we all do, but I'm thinking of in this action here.
Well, we happen to know the story. You're, and I don't mean to be poking fun.
No, I know.
Bill, you've identified Judas, what was his motivation, and Peter, and what we're going to see. We're not going to answer that today. We're going to see two different paths. We're going to see two different paths of choice, all choices. Was Judas, I mean, let's just stay in the moment here. Was Judas bringing the entourage of people to arrest Jesus out of love? I think he thought so, but I think he was actually, his decision was here. It was about how he was number one. It's about what he thought. But he thought he was here. The good of the kingdom, to usher in the kingdom. But really his motivation is here. Now that's my perception. And it's because he took a good thing and he really turned it south through what he did inside of his own head. And we see it every single day, both in ourselves and in other people.
Yeah.
One thing, Mike, that I had a business for a while, repairing things. And in that business, I had a database that I had to learn how to program for various billing and accounting purposes. And so I spent so much time doing it, I kind of was thinking in this Boolean language of if this, then that, else this. And in everything that I did, there was a decisive answer. Excuse me?
Like a logic, a Boolean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was definite answer to the equation that I put in.
Yeah.
And I spend so much time doing it that I realized I like this. I like doing um, if this happens, then this will happen. If this doesn't happen, then that will happen. Else this will happen by default.
Right. Right.
And where I found the problem was because I was thinking in those terms, when I got around people, I was very disappointed that they didn't think that way. It's like, wait a minute, I did this. Why aren't you doing that?
Right.
I'm programming you, but you're not responding in a logical way. You're I'm acting in a loving Jesus-like manner. Therefore, the output should be a loving Jesus-like response. But that doesn't what isn't what always happens.
No, exactly right.
And you get frustrated because people are so multifaceted and so complex, and time keeps moving on. The world is affecting people as we speak. That you think if I act in a way that I purposely and choose to act in a loving Jesus like manner, this will be my response.
Right.
This person will respond in kind. Not thinking that while I'm doing this decision, the world is attacking this person and laying layers of problems on top of them that's causing them not to respond in the way that I want.
Right.
Because people are not binary. They're so I would respond to my wife at the time in a way that this is a loving gesture, Vince. She's certainly going to respond in this way. A plus B equals C.
Right.
Got it. And then she doesn't. And I'm like, what the heck? you know, does does the Bible not work? Or did Jesus make a mistake? Or is she of the devil? Or is she's just a human being? Human beings are not that binary. They're very complex.
Yeah.
They have a lot of stuff going on in their life that you're just one little piece of. And sometimes you hit it and sometimes you miss it.
Right.
You know, uh, I can't imagine with Steve, in the vocation that he chose to explore, if you're talking to a young child that's hurting himself, and as you get involved in his life, you find out, well, I'm hurting myself because my dad threw me in a pot of boiling water. It's like, what? Who does that? Wait, that's that even possible?
Yeah.
Hmm.
This is a layer of complexity that our lives don't even expose us to. And then you have to address it, you know? It's too complex.
Vince,
We
I'm
we
going to
don't have
comment on that, but Jeff, you go first.
Yeah, I have an example of what Vince was talking about from a story a guy told last night at our community group. So one of the things I was thinking is my choices, even though it's difficult, should not be based on what somebody else's response is going to be. So here's an example. You're going into Lucky's and they don't have an automatic door, and you open the door for some gal that's coming back, and she goes, I don't need anybody to open that door for me. You're trying to do something,
Yeah.
unselfish and help somebody out. And their response is that you're calling them weak. You're saying I'm less than you, so you have to hold this door for me. So you're not, your choice to open that door shouldn't be based on what this person's going to say or do. Your choice, knowing that my current state is that I'm loved by God, I'm going to do something loving for somebody,
Right.
regardless of what they respond like. So that and back to Steve's thing, we don't get from P1 to P7 like that. Sometimes we have to really kind of inch ourselves down there, and our choices and our responses in life move us hopefully down the scale toward, a selfless response in every situation. So whether you get there or not, you get there piecemeal. You don't get there like from one giant leap.
Right. Thanks, Jeff. Dave, your comment.
I think there's very long pole in the tent here, and it's actually in the middle of this verse. And I've did a little study on this, which I'll send to you after we're done here, and I may have already sent it, but it has to do with the I am.
Mhm.
And this goes all the way back to Moses' first encounter. And it's when Moses just began to grasp who this God was that he was really interacting with. It really hadn't hit him. But from that point forward, he had a much deeper understanding. And it's a parallel to what we're called to be. You know, we use the phrase of we're growing, we're trying to learn to be more Christ-like, we're trying to be more followers, we're trying to be his children, and that we're children that he will be proud of, all that kind of concept. And here in the midst of the whole thing after the garden, on the way to the trials and tribulations through Caiaphas and Pilate and all the rest of this, when confronted by the mass of everything that was coming against him at a point in time, here he is in the garden. He knows what's coming, but his reaction is not Jesus the man. His reaction is Jesus the God, and his response is, I am.
Mhm.
And if we can learn and grow and become more aware of who the I am is in us, then that gives us the starting point that Jeff has so eloquently stated, and the others, you know, if we know that we are loved, if we know that we're in the hands of the I am, it changes everything. It
It does.
changes everything,
Mhm.
which is not to say that we're always there, because we seem to have all these faults.
Yeah.
Well, I am knows that. You can go back to Genesis 6 or Exodus 6:3. He knew about Moses and Moses' faults, but he said, I am. And it was in that context, Moses, that you're to follow me, not in your context. So I
Mhm.
think that's a really long pole in the tent here.
Well,
And I think sometimes both the Hebrew and the Greek translations, we kind of get lost in some of the theories and the ideas when the basis is to know the I am.
Thanks, Dave, because I was
Mike,
looking at Young's translation, forgot there, and that word "I am he was in brackets because it was not in the original translation. It was just "I am."
Just I am. Yep.
you like oftentimes, Dave, you really bring a great conclusion. I love that analogy of a very large tent pole. And from my perception, you couldn't be more right. It'll be fun to compare what we talk about in the study, my preparation, with what you send. And I, I, I agree 100%. And we'll of course we'll look at that and discuss that. So, and we'll do that next week. And I'm working on it now. It may be broken into two, I'm not sure, but it is a huge piece of exactly what Dave is talking about, and it makes all the difference. Yeah. So thank you guys. Thanks for coming.
Right.
It's 8 o'clock, and we'll
When,
see. Today is the 23rd. Next week is the 30th. I'll be here. So we'll see you next week. Thank you all for your comments.
hey, Steve, quick question. Steve, when do you leave?
Yeah, I leave on Saturday. I'll be gone for the next 3 Wednesdays, Mike.
Okay, so no
So
song. You won't be joining us?
I won't be joining you as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay.
They don't have Wi-Fi up there north of the Arctic Circle.
Well, the ship should have it at least part of the time. But I can't guarantee it. And then with the time change, yeah.
Well,
So
we'd love to have you if you want to join us from the ship, but there's no obligation with the songs and or the hymns next week.
yeah.
So
All right.
all right, have a good trip, Steve.
Thank you.
Talk to you all.
So
Bye.
long. Bye
Bye
now.
for now.